They're scrambling back there. They're scrambling back there.
Is it the drinks? What? You need me to take the drinks?
No, no, no. No, I said no.
Back up off my drink. Take my coffee, boy.
Yeah. All right, hello everyone. Hello everybody. We are, so I'm going to let Isaiah's up there on the media computer. I sent an email to the Lifeway media team, and I'm going to let him get that loaded for Lifetalks. So what I'll do is, here's the graphic. All right. So today we got. I want to get your feedback. These guys were sitting back in the green room, and I told them. I said, "Hey, would you like to go out for Life Talk with me?" They have no idea what our topic is today. I just grabbed them as they were in the green room, so they don't even know what we're talking about today. And so we're just going to see. We're just going to see how they do under the gun. So as I introduce the topic to you, and as soon, hey, media, as soon as you get it, just throw it up on the screen, okay? And today I want to talk about real briefly something that my brother and I have been working on for it's been about a year now, and it is called the balanced missional ecosystem. One of the things, so I just want to run you through the real quickly, just by way of background. I want to run you through how this all sort of came about. For those of you that might not know. All right, so it was probably about now 10 years ago, maybe not quite 10, but about 10 years ago, my brother and I went to Exponential Conference in Orlando. Exponential is the largest church planting conference in the world. It's totally non-denominational. By interdenominational. Non-denominational is a weighted word. So it's completely interdenominational. There's Pentecostal people there. There's Presbyterian people there. There's, whatever. Just sort of sharing ideas about church planting. And in that, during that period of time, I was in the process of getting my master's degree. And so I was using church planting. Church planting was my master's thesis. And so that's one of the reasons why I was at Orlando. Well, during that period of time, I got into contact with a guy by the name of Dan Grider. Dan Grider was the executive pastor at Saddleback Church. Now, Saddleback Church, you might have heard of Saddleback Church. It was the largest, Saddleback was the I don't know, maybe the largest, second largest, maybe Willow Creek might have been bigger, but one of the 5 largest churches in the United States.
80,000 baptisms, something like that.
80,000?
I think so.
Wow. So yeah, so Dan Grider had been a part of that, and so my brother and I don't know anybody that's there. We don't know any of the names. We don't know any of the people. So he's like, "Hey, let's just go to this." Let's go to this seminar. So we go to Dan Grider's seminar. We connect with him. Well, so Dan Grider had left Saddleback. He was at a new church or new place. He was doing a new ministry, and he had kind of been, I don't know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but disenfranchised maybe with the mega church movement. Now, You guys have heard me talk about the megachurch movement. The megachurch movement was, you've heard the statistics, right? 1970, there were 150 megachurches in America. 1980, there were 300. 1990, there were 600. 2000, there were 1,200 megachurches. And so it looked like there was a doubling of megachurches in America every 10 years. And so there were a lot of people that were saying the church in America is on the rise. There's revival in America. But all of a sudden in about 2010, somewhere in there, thank you guys, and somewhere around 2010, there was some data that came out, some statistics, and they had been trying to figure out what these statistics meant. And what they found was that with every megachurch that had emerged into megachurch status, which is an average, megachurch is an average of 2,000 in weekly attendance for a year. Okay, so an average of 2,000 in weekly attendance for a year. They found that every megachurch that emerged into megachurch status had there were two factors associated with every one. And that was, there was an average of 13 churches that had closed in a 30-mile radius of those churches, number one. And number two, only 10% of their growth came from baptisms.
They were just sucking up all the little churches.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So that was, so all of a sudden the question was, wow, how do we pivot and have a discussion that basically says, all this time we thought the church in America was really doing great. The truth of the matter is that the church is basically on a serious decline, and the only thing that is propping it up is that the people that still want to go to church are populating these large churches. Well, the problem with that in that period of time, in that like 1970 to 2010 era, in that 40 or 45 year era, there was this proliferation of church growth gurus who came into prominence in this period of time by basically going in and studying what these mega churches were doing. And then they were doing conferences helping mid-sized churches to say, this is what you need to do to have skyrocketing growth. Well, all of a sudden now in 2010, 12, 14, there was about a 4 or 5 year period, kind of 2010 to 2015 really, that the real discussion was, man, how do we introduce this? Like, how do we say to people that number one, that it was a house of cards, right? Number two, that the church wasn't really actually gaining ground, no matter how you define, okay? Look, no matter how you define how a person, quote unquote, gets saved, from the loosest definition of shaking a preacher's hand and accepting Jesus as your personal Savior, all the way to baptism is essential, and like any form of, I mean, they basically lowered the bar to baptisms to just simply say, how many people are actually have never had a baptism experience, and it was the only way that they could sort of differentiate new believers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where the thing kind of was when I entered the arena of the conversation in 2016-ish. And at that time, there were a lot of people that had started this discussion that said, well, clearly clearly the answer is not the attractional church model. Right? I mean, it wasn't just apostolic people, like it was across the board. Everybody was saying the answer is clearly not, let's do church bigger, let's do church better, let's do church cooler, let's do church more awesome, and we'll get people through the door. And what they were trying to communicate was, man, all of your cooler church stuff is basically just attracting people who are already church people who want to move from their lesser cool church to the more cool church. You tracking with me? In other words, unbelievers weren't necessarily impressed with your 30-foot digital screen. You tracking with me? Like unbelievers really weren't impressed with your the light show, the fog machines, that kind of thing.
It's because they just got back from a football game that did it better.
That's true. Yeah, and we'll never compete. So what the data was finding, and this wasn't just small beans, this wasn't just small beans research. This was the Lifeway Research Group. This was Tom Rayner, and Ed Stetzer. Ed Stetzer, who is he's the dean of evangelism at Wheaton, Billy Graham School of Evangelism at Wheaton College, and I think he's recently taught in Oxford, and you had Tom Rayner, who's written the Simple Church, and I mean these guys were heading up like Lifeway Research Group and Barna and Pew Research Group and all. The numbers were showing and demonstrating that unbelievers just weren't impressed. So the idea then was, well, what are we going to do to reach lost people? What are we going to do to reach people who don't know God? And so there was a lot of jockeying and moving around and so on and so forth. And one strong voice that kind of came out in this era was a voice that said, we just need to go to 100% organic evangelism. One-on-one, person-on-person, individuals reaching individuals. That's going to be the most authentic, real way that we're going to reach the world. Okay, so in this period of time, so many of you are familiar with that, how that process played out at Lifeway. And so in the last 3 or 4 years, my brother and I, we've got about 70 pastors in the Mobilized Church Network. And so right now we're moving towards this idea that says, is that the primary way? And we're realizing that in an apostolic context, there is something about gathering together, the move of God, the power of God moving in a worship service, people coming together, worshiping together, that can't necessarily be duplicated in a coffee shop.
That's right.
Now, you can sit down in a coffee shop and have an engaging conversation with someone and have a spiritual conversation. But if you are, wow, I'm gonna say it like this. If you're from a denominational background where you can just sit there and pray a quiet prayer and say, you could just be saved right now. You could pray in Starbucks and somebody could get saved right there in Starbucks. But if you believe that John 3:5, that Jesus said, except you're born of the water of the Spirit, that John 3:5 becomes a model for the New Testament church throughout the book of Acts. Acts 2, 8, 10, 19, John 3:5 becomes the model that's replicated, water, baptism, Spirit, and filling. Then you begin to realize that there's some wider, more expansive. Okay, so that's where the journey has been. So today, I kind of want to introduce to you something that we've been working on. It's probably been about 2 full years, but this is about one solid year of just working through what we're calling the balanced missional ecosystem. And the balanced missional ecosystem is basically 4 interconnected environments that work together to cultivate mission, transformation, and multiplication. Okay? So I want to talk about that a little bit today. And I just want to introduce this to you. We're not going to, you're not going to launch out and start anything if you don't want to. You're not going to be challenged today to do anything in particular. Just simply challenged to reach out and say, this looks like the book of Acts. Okay? So before we dive off in there, one of the reasons why these 2 guys, I grabbed them from the green room. They just got the introduction. They just got the introduction to the topic right alongside you. Okay?
Never seen this. Yeah.
Right, never seen it. Literally finished this week. My brother in Toledo, they just started, watch this, they just started last Wednesday night. They just started what's called all-in groups. It's something we've developed, and it's around the 7 miracles of Jesus in the book of John. John actually built his gospel around 7 primary miracles where Jesus put the kingdom on display and then invited people to go all in. In fact, John actually says at the end, it might be John 20, somewhere there, John at the end of his gospel actually says, these things were done so that you might know that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and that you might have faith in him.
That's right.
That's what John says at the end of John, at the end of his gospel. So what John is saying is, I've included 7 miracles where Jesus put the kingdom on display and said, this is what my kingdom is like, and then invited people to go all in, which is, the Greek word pisteuo for the word faith, right? So the seven miracles of Jesus in John that invite people to go all in, we've actually created what we call all-in groups. And the all-in groups are basically where you take people who you know in your life and in your world who are interested, open, hungry, whatever, and it gives you an opportunity to go 7 weeks and you just get together and talk about each week one of the 7 miracles and have a discussion about those miracles. And it's an opportunity for you to bring a coworker, a neighbor, somebody, not to take them straight towards giving their life to the Lord today. It's giving them the ability to go through and discover who Jesus is, what his kingdom is like, and whether or not they want to put their full trust and faith in him and become a full-on Christ follower. So, yeah. So they started this last Wednesday, and they had over 100 people sign up. I think he told me they've got 7 groups with an average of like 15 per group, right? So they've got 105 people. And he said that he sent me a copy of some of the texts that are coming back. They're doing them in homes. They're doing them all over the community. They've got a couple of them that are going on Wednesday night in the church building itself. And so anyway, that would fit inside the top right corner of what we call a discovery group. Okay? So let's just go over real briefly, and I'm not going to introduce this, but I want to take a pause, and I want to introduce this, but I just wanted to say one of the reasons why I think these 2 guys are able to speak to this topic is because that Brother Haltom has led the charge with X groups among the young adults and students. And the Thorntons have consistently had 4 or 5 or 6 brand new families at their house. I mean, there was a period of time last year when it was weekly, right? Every single week, there were new families that were coming, new young families from Lifeway that were coming to their house every single week for like a year, okay? Or they were going to their house or, whatever. So anyway, so the four groups, so here's what I want you to get. These 4 areas are not linear. In other words, you don't do one thing and then you go to the next thing, then you go to the next thing, then you go to the next thing. In other words, okay, so let's just introduce them. All right, so the green one in the top left is personal missional environment. The idea is believers live as missionaries where they learn, live, work, and play. This is an everyday environment where relationships form, kingdom witnesses displayed, and spiritual conversations emerge in ordinary life. In other words, this is you and I living on mission in the spaces and the natural rhythms of our life. It's at our work, it's at the gym, it's at the golf course, it's in our neighborhood. It's the places where God has specifically put us to be the missionaries to those people in those spaces that we have the most influence in. Down on the bottom, below that is called discipling group environment. The discipling group environment, that's actually purple. I don't know if you can, I don't think you can see it on the screen. It's actually in the actual graphic, that's purple. The discipling group environment, disciplable people are intentionally gathered into transformational environments for obedience, accountability, kingdom fluency, and multiplication. This includes X groups and X group functioning Bible studies. The next one over is the corporate church environment, the orange one. The church gathers for worship, teaching, prayer, alignment, celebration, and sending. This environment strengthens identity, it reinforces mission, and fuels believers for life beyond the gathering. And then the one above that is blue, and that's discovery group environment. And these are all-in groups and other relational spaces like life groups. And it's where people do life and explore faith together in relational environments where spiritual openness becomes visible and disciplability can be discovered. This includes all-in groups, life groups, exploratory Bible studies, and similar places. Exploratory Bible studies would be if you've got somebody who says, well, I don't even know anything about the Bible. And you say, well, would you be interested in doing a Bible study with me? And you can literally sit down with somebody who's a complete unbeliever, and you could sit down with somebody and do a Bible study, and you can use that like a discovery group. You could do an individual, you could do 2 or 3 people, you could go to a family, and it's not growing them in their relationship with Jesus Christ. It's growing them in their knowledge. The Bible said faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of the Lord. And so it's growing them in their understanding of the word of God and the plan of God and who Jesus is, and bringing them to a place that they can discover what's available to them in the kingdom and what's available to them in and through Jesus Christ, okay? So these four places are what we're calling a balanced missional ecosystem. I personally believe that in 2026 and beyond, churches that the only thing that they've got is the corporate church environment as their main evangelism, their main missional focus, are going to increasingly lose market share in the missional world.
So did his miracles. Jesus would feed 5,000.
Yeah.
But he would go spend time with the people that wanted to stay, which were 12. Mm-hmm. And then ask those 12, you gonna leave me like they all did?
Yeah. So let's discuss that a little bit. What I want to do is I want to open this up for questions. I want you to ask any kind of question that you might have. And the idea is if you look at that, the box that's just below the balanced missional ecosystem explanation, basically what that says is live missionally, discover the disciplable, gather hot coals, form disciples, multiply the mission.
That's right.
That's what we've been hearing all along. That's the be, make, multiply framework. Be a disciple, experience transformation for yourself, have spiritual conversation, develop spiritual fluency, develop gospel fluency like I preached Wednesday night, and then you move towards having spiritual conversations and you discover disciplable people. But it could be in a discovery group environment. It could be in your personal missional environment. It could be somebody you connect with on Sunday morning who's a first-time guest that just walked in the building because they saw their...
That's right.
Just because they saw a Facebook ad.
That's right.
All right? And I will tell you, I had a meeting on Thursday with my brother and Brother Kent Elliott from Connecticut with Faith Funnels. And we had a conversation, and we're going to sign up for Faith Funnels.
All right.
And it's $1,000 a month to be a part of Faith Funnels. But the churches that are a part of, here's why. Here's why we're going to do Faith Funnels. Okay, you ready? Because how many times have you heard me say, until we can get to the place that we saturate every corner of our society and every area of this region, so that we're coming into contact with every person that Jesus is drawing, then we're going to have to understand that, number one, the Spirit is going to draw people to you.
That's right.
And to hear.
That's right.
And the number one origination point of discovery right now in North America is not a person going to you and say, hey, I want to ask you about some questions that I've got, some spiritual questions. It's they go online.
That's right.
And they start searching and seeking online. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to engage them online, get them to come here. So that one of the reasons why we need to have a balanced missional ecosystem is you and I need to understand that there's no way that we can have a guest follow-up program that's going to be good enough to engage people at the relational level that we need to engage them to be able to encounter and figure out of these 100 first-time guests that we've had in the last month, how many of those are disciplable? Mm-hmm. And how are we going to get them into, right? And the only way that most institutional churches know how to do it is to go linear. They came through the door, and then we're going to put them in a discipleship class, and then we're going to put them in a connect group, and then we're going to put them in And what happens is it's a great safety net and mechanism if you don't have a relational piece, but at the end of the day, it doesn't get down to that one-on-one transformational piece. So anyway, guys, go ahead, whatever questions that you may have, and from your experience, talk.
I have a question for you.
All right.
So I think we've all seen the environment where everything focuses on the corporate church environment, right, and maybe the other pieces are lighter. Maybe not a discipling group environment, maybe not a discovery group environment, maybe some personal missional environment. But I'm starting to see and have seen sort of a popularity around churches or movements that reject the corporate church environment. So they only do discipleship groups, or they only do micro churches.
Right.
What do you think is wrong with that approach?
Actually, see, that's an amazing. Okay, so that's an amazing question, because the those types of things are reflexes. Okay, those kinds of things are reflexes. Where the idea there is, well, if we got to go 100% organic in disciple making, then let's just go organic in church culture and organic. And so our church is going to be, 40 micro churches of 10.
Yeah. And some churches are calling like a Zumba class discipleship group,
right,
a church.
Yes. Right. Right.
Not good.
No. Well, and For that, by the way, just for that, I've got, I won't try to get them to get it on the screen right now, but I've actually got a document that I've done that is a theological exploration of what actually constitutes a church. There's three primary things that must be involved for a church to actually be a church. It's not just simply people who believe in Jesus getting together to exercise, right? So it's not, the church is not just a church because it's gathered believers, and so I think there's some depth to that and some understanding to that. But specifically to your question, I think the issue is that because of the fact that the revelations that came from like 2010 to 2015, where everybody thought, well, man, and when I say everybody, I'm really literally saying everybody. I mean, it was so prominent that even Outreach Magazine, who's been notorious for having an issue that lists the 100 fastest growing churches in America in, I think it was 2000 and maybe 2021 or 2, something like that, maybe 22, actually did an article that said, watch this, you ready for this? That after COVID, the number of megachurches in America dropped from about 1,600. So there was 1,200 in 2000. There was about 1,600 by 2010. After COVID, megachurches went from 1,600 megachurches to 800 megachurches. Megachurches dropped in half from after COVID. And one of the reasons why I think that's so huge is because it proved what the conversation was from 2010 to 2015. These people are not, you do not have people that are populating these megachurches because they're hungry for God, hungry for a revival, et cetera, et cetera. These are predominantly consumer Christians that are there because they like the way they're doing church. They like the product. Right. They like the church product better. And they like the anonymity of being a part of a really big church. Mm-hmm. And so COVID comes along and people are like, you know what? I think let's just do biscuits and gravy and our jammies and watch the live stream and go to church that way. And that's how these churches after COVID went from 1,600 to 800 mega churches in a year, 1 year. From 2020 to 2021, the number of mega churches in America dropped in half. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that's 2021. By 2026, there aren't even any good estimates right now for me to give you the numbers because these mega churches have stopped responding to the research queries.
Saw on Facebook, Lakewood Church in Houston. They're having problems not showing all the empty seats.
Yes, right.
It's a 50,000 a week mega church.
Yes.
And they're having trouble.
Yeah, and so the thing is, and so obviously they're not responding to the research.
It was on Facebook, so it's true.
Yeah, right, exactly. Social media confirmed. No, but I think the thing about it is that what it kind of demonstrates is that I think it's probably a little bit embarrassing for some of these mega churches, number one. Number two, some of them are being asked the question that are responding, how many people have come back? What is your average attendance? How much of that attendance are you figuring from your online community? Mm-hmm. And when they're answering and saying, yeah, we're back to 2,000 a week, they're saying 1,400 in service, 600 online. And that's the kind of data that's coming out right now. And so anyway, I think, but that circles around your question though, of saying that the answer is never, let's swing the pendulum the other direction and say, well, instead of mega churches, let's just have a bunch of house churches that populate everywhere and have this light, You know, and there was even conversation that was going on that was saying, you know, man, if we ever have another pandemic, we may have to go to this kind of a, well, okay. But don't create, there is, my dad used to say it like this, there's an exception to every rule, but don't try to make a rule out of the exception.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And so you could probably, you know, you could point to some churches that are saying, hey, these are thriving churches and they've got these small, the Bible says, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, and all the more as you see the day approaching. We have a biblical responsibility to assemble together.
That's right.
And it's not just it's the whole body.
That's right.
Right? So, because that was a epistle that was written to whole churches. That wasn't epistles that were written to individuals. So God wasn't saying to people, you need to gather together. And so you're saying, well, yeah, we got together with, our family got together with so-and-so family and we went and had dinner.
Right.
That's not what.
No, to assemble,
Yeah.
to exhort each other.
Yeah, to gather together as the whole church.
That's right.
So anyway, any questions from out here? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great. In fact, my brother and I were actually invited into Nashville a couple of years ago, and we went to it was like a Shark Tank event, and they had about $500,000 that they were going to do $100,000 to 5 different ministries, and we were going to choose out of like 20 ministries that were given their pitch. One of them was an online community that was going to help try to disciple. It was gamers and it was all kinds of stuff, but it was to how to take this young generation and say, but you need community too.
That's right.
It's not just about it. You're not watching a sitcom. You're not watching a YouTube video. There's something about what it means to be a part of the koinonia, the fellowship of the body of Christ. And so, yeah, I think that's a great question. And I believe that is one of the reasons why we need to be able to say there's going to be a large number of the next generation that's looking for Jesus online. And the idea must be then that, in fact, I'll tell you something really cool. The meeting that we had, I love the question you asked, and thank you. Because Kent Elliott on Thursday in this meeting said, I told him, I said, you know, it's interesting. I said, because there's a lot of data coming out right now that's saying that one of the most difficult things is to move people out of anonymity and into public connection. And I said, how do you do that with the people that are searching online? He said, on Saturday night, he took his phone. He said, on Saturday night, the app will send you a message and say, there are 10 people that have planned to visit your church tomorrow. You hit a button and you say, you know, hey, this is Pastor Ken. I just wanted to send you a quick message and let you know that I saw that you planned your visit for tomorrow. We're really looking forward to meeting you. In fact, if you'll be here at 10:45, we got a coffee shop. We want you to have a free coffee, donut on me. Come on in. I'd like to meet you if you come a little bit early. I'm excited about meeting you tomorrow, and thank you for making your plan to come to Lifeway tomorrow. And that message will go out to them, and it's a bridge to help them understand that they know that person, they know the pastor, they know the people that they're going to meet when they walk through the door. And it's a real challenge to move people out of anonymity into that connection. But I also believe that this speaks to the reason why it's so important that we have people that are willing to do
That's right.
personal evangelism, not just simply depend. That's why I said, I believe that if churches are depending on the corporate church environment to do the mission, they're going to increasingly lose market share of the mission field. Mm-hmm. Because there's going to be less and less of the next generation that are going to seek for Jesus first by walking through the doors of a church and going to a church service. It's nearing zero. Yeah. So, but here's the thing though. So when we started, when my brother and I started coaching these pastors and whatever, we started really emphasizing like, the only real biblical book of Acts type of evangelism and mission is you in your daily rhythms of life and in your spaces of life. And what happened was we began to realize that there were just a lot of people that weren't necessarily self-starters. There were a lot of people that just weren't real comfortable doing that, huh?
No, I agree.
Yeah, there were a lot of people that I don't even have a lot of friends that don't serve God. And so what we began to realize was, number one, you got a lot of people that are seeking online. Number two, it might be easier to invite somebody before you even invite them to a church service, which is why, to your question specifically, Sister Jill, that's why you got the discovery group environment, because the discovery group could be the all-in group, which is why I think that there were over 100 people that signed up at my brother's church in Toledo for the all-in group. Because what is it? It's an opportunity for somebody to sit down with 4 or 5 people around coffee and maybe nachos, and just sit around and talk about the miracles of Jesus and how those miracles invite us to go all in.
That's right.
And that may be I believe that is increasingly going to be an indispensable bridge for people that, like you're talking about, that just prefer to be like, man, I'd rather just, I don't want to be there in that crowd. I don't want to be with all those people.
I was going to say social anxiety is on the rise. I know that that's not going to contribute 100% to every person's situation, but I think you have fewer people that are willing to go to a large crowd with a coworker that you may already kind of be only loosely connected with.
Right.
So you got to start to build that bridge first.
It's a great point. Well, and that's the thing. Where, man, like, why don't you come to church with me Sunday? It's still an awesome and valid way to engage somebody. Right. That's why we wanted to do a balanced missional ecosystem. Those of you that's been around at Lifeway long enough will remember me saying, just because you invited somebody to a church service doesn't mean that you did the mission. That's right. Looking at somebody and saying, you ought to come to revival with me, is not doing the mission. That's right. Okay? Well,
that was the bachelor's degree version.
That's true. He said that was the bachelor degree version. But
the doctoral version.
Yeah. So, but I do think it is important, though. It is important to say we just need to understand that, yeah, it might be the best thing you can do with somebody that you don't really have any kind of a relationship with them whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And you just sort of, it's just a passing conversation that you've got with someone. You don't know them. You're not really connected with them. It might be the best thing you can do. The only thing that you can do that isn't cringy. Mm-hmm. You're not gonna say to your server, I don't care. You're not gonna say to your server, hey, why don't you give me your phone number and I'd love to connect with you. You're clearly hungry for the things of God.
Come to my house for a small.
Bro, right. That's going to be really creepy and cringy. And like, right, people are like, you're weird now. Mm-hmm. For just a minute there, I was thinking you were cool. And now you're a weirdo. And And so what I'm saying is handing somebody a card and saying, man, I don't know what you know about God, church, whatever. If you get an opportunity, if I'd love for you to come, you can sit with me. If you come sit with me, I'll buy you lunch.
Right.
I mean, that now it's not quite as cringy, right? And it still is a way to do the mission. It's just that we need to increasingly understand in this day and age, like, I don't necessarily know that that's going to be. So anyway, final words.
The hardest part is the personal missional environment.
100%.
Hardest part, but it's also the greatest part, because when you make up your mind, the Lord will do his part and put the whole thing together.
Amen.
100%.
Amen. Whatever
it takes to reach people.
That's good.
If we love people enough, we'll figure it out.
I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna make this available to you. I may not make it available today because I literally just sent this to my brother like 24 hours ago and said this is, we had some arrows and he's like, man, I don't like the arrows, and we had stuff numbered and he's like, that makes it feel like it's linear. So this is like a draft copy, but on the bottom, and I just want to share this with you so that you know what this is saying here, but it says why it matters, okay? So you see like a church, mission is not outsourced to the institution, the one with the heart and the people. The whole church becomes a missionary people. The next one with the gears, it says corporate and organic expressions work together. You tracking with me? Corporate and organic expressions are working together. The one where there's the two people and there's the little conversation bubble. Transformation is intensified in relational environments. And the last one with the graph, it says multiplication grows out of a balanced ecosystem. Okay? So I'm going to get this to you. I just want to introduce this. I just want you to know kind of like, man, here's where we're going. Okay? I just want you to know here's where we're going, and these are some ways that we're trying to make it easier and easier and easier for you to find a spot where you can plug in and grow into the plan that God's got for you to be a missionary to this last generation. All right? All right, go get a coffee, go get a donut, go get you one of those cool raspberry Italian sodas, cream sodas, and if you got kids in Sunday school, they'll appreciate you getting